We as a group were looking at how can public policies support social entrepreneurship to build more inclusive societies. So I was thinking back to the workshop the other day, we learned in the mega trends that we're having more non-inclusive societies because due to social inequalities increasing, being health disparities, social economic disparities. And the reason for that, especially in terms of our topic, was that there's a need for more innovative solutions, and the approach to these challenges are insufficient, and that there's an inability to have proper cross-sectoral and border collaboration, inability to solve cross-sector and cross-border problems. So what is social innovation? So as a team, we've identified that social innovation, they take novel approaches, ideas, and solutions to address relevant social challenges. And kind of a broad working definition we came up with is a process of creating more effective, efficient, sustainable systems. So we've kind of identified the process here, and there's some four factors that we've identified. So it's a process, it requires cross-sectoral collaboration, it needs to be open, it needs to be bottom-up, so not hierarchical, and the life cycle of the social innovation involves, there need to be proposals, prototype, it needs to be sustainable, it needs to be scalable, and there need to be systemic changes.
Having identified social innovation as a process, there's various actors that can actually drive and initiate that process, but we decided to narrow it down more to social entrepreneurship. So what is social entrepreneurship? Well, social entrepreneurship is a process in which social entrepreneurs use market-oriented approaches and use entrepreneurial and market-oriented approaches to start and grow new organizations to deliver social change. Important to keep in mind is that for those organizations, profit is kind of seen as a means rather than an end. Could you go to the next slide? Yes. So in order for social entrepreneurs to flourish, the environment in which they operate needs to be facilitative of nature. And this appears not always to be the case. They struggle with poor visibility, they have difficulties to access markets, they have difficulties to obtain finance. Also, the legislative and regulative environment is not always facilitative. So if we want social entrepreneurship to help build inclusive societies, we need to think of a way to make this environment conducive. And this is where, for us, public policy may step in. So, yeah. Having said that, we pitch that there's a need for specific social entrepreneurship policies, but how do we design that? So considering the content of those public policies, there are various different tools or instruments which you can see clustered around the outer circle. There's 20 different ones that can be used to support social entrepreneurship. To exemplify, there are social impact bonds, there are public campaigns, social stock exchange, training programs. So there's a lot of different instruments. Important though is that it is important though, however, to select instrument mixes that account for all of the different dimensions of that ecosystem, and that is represented in the outer circle. So we have legislation and regulation, finance, markets, culture, human capital, support structures and services, and research and impact. Important when we start to design that is to first benchmark the existing ecosystem, right? So you need to gather data, because if you don't know what the barriers are in your specific context, the policy won't be effective. It is then also important to really account for all of those different dimensions, as these dimensions are interconnected and interrelated. So if you just focus on finance, but you fail to address human capital, your policy will not be effective. That is also to take into consideration or like looking at the design of the individual instruments, it's important to also take into account the different needs that social entrepreneurs have throughout different stages of this innovation process. So looking more at not only the content of the policy, there are the processes. So there's policy formulation, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. So there it's really important to ensure for coherence, not only vertical, but also horizontally. It is important that it's inclusive, so to bring the social entrepreneurs to the table, because they are the ones that are having the contact with the communities that are affected. And lastly, to also ensure that all of these processes are transparent. Yeah, all of this is important to ensure that the policy will be sustainable.